What's going on, everybody? You guys have seen me do a lot of videos on YouTube and whatnot for, how to build a home lab and, stuff like that, and walking you through VMware's configuration and stuff like that. So I decided to walk you through my home lab. So you've seen some videos in the past of where I've gone through and I've walked you through how things are set up and stuff like that. So I wanted to do an update video on that. It's been a while. I don't remember when the last time it is that I recorded one, but I have since relocated everything down to my basement right now, and so yeah, I'm gonna walk you through what I've got going on, give you a step-by-step breakdown as to what's going on with what, and go from there. So um, it's in the basement, and if you look over right here, that cable right there actually goes upstairs to my living room, and on top of a wall in my living room there is a Netgear access point. It's got the ability to support 802.11 AC. There's a couple of devices in my network that don't support AC, so the access point will automatically downgrade its capabilities to, I think, G or N. So, then again, I'm not a wireless guy. I know just some of the basics. So that's pretty much where that comes into play. Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to walk you through the lab, break down. I'm going to flip it around and just narrate and stuff like that. We'll go from the bottom up, and we'll talk about some other stuff, and I'll show you how I have it all powered. All of my equipment is on its own circuit here in my house, so I won't show you the circuit breaker because I'm not an electrician, but everything's on its own dedicated circuit. So as I used to have problems with power and stuff like that, where you get my wife would be upstairs doing something, and then she would have one too many things plugged into the and it would pop a circuit. So, and then I'd lose all my gear. Be like, okay. So I'm gonna flip you guys around, and we'll go begin again, and I'll start from the bottom up. Okay, guys. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna show you the front view. So, and where some people would say the business side, but in most cases that's actually not the case. We're going to do the front view first, and then I'll walk you around to the back side, and then we'll go from there. So at the very, very bottom here, we have an IBM 3850, I believe it's an M3 model. I can double check upstairs. Actually, it might be you know what, I ripped the bezel off a long time ago. But this guy's got 128 gigs of RAM. It's a the processor on it, which I forget the make and model. I'll have to check when I get it back upstairs to my server. This is actually the server that my service provider lab sits on top of. Plus, I run a couple of other software capabilities. Usually, this is where the more beefy virtual machines sit, because of the fact that this has got the bigger, more horsepower. And I know there's some comments in the last video that I put out on the home lab build that were like, "Oh my God, cabling's messy." Guys, it's a home lab. So it's meant to be messed with and monkeyed around with and stuff like that. That's the whole purpose of the lab. So this is the bottom. The portion I'm showing you right now is home lab for testing. So moving up to the 5th and 6th U, because the IBM is a 4U. The 5th and 6th U is a IBM 3650 M2. That's got 64 gigs of RAM on it, and that is actually the security ESXi server. So all of my security stuff goes on top of that. All the ASAs, ICE, and stuff like that. All of that sits on there. The server above that is identical to the one below it. Slightly newer processor. Instead of being, I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but that's got 64 gigs of RAM. These both have 64 gigs of RAM apiece on them, and very, very similar Intel processors. Intel Xeon. I forget which generation they are, but then we have they all have one hard drive in them, which is this bay right here, I believe, and then this bay and this bay. And the reason for that is because all of their storage is actually sitting on this guy. This is an old Dell PC of mine that I've got, that I Figured, you know what, it's Windows 7 Pro currently. It's an older i5 uh, box, and actually it's an Intel Pentium. It's an older PC. It was actually the first PC I bought when I went back to school in 2011. So that's how long that box has been around. It does well. It's got quite a bit of RAM. It's got 4 gigs of RAM in it, and then it's got 6.5 terabytes of storage. It's a 500 gig drive that runs the operating system and stuff like that in the base OS, and then it's got two 3 terabyte drives. One of the 3 terabyte drives is dedicated to iSCSI storage for this guy. So all these, actually for these two right here. The one above that actually is not an ESXi server. That server has a Windows Server or Windows 7 Pro installed on it, and that's where I run GNS3 and stuff like that. It's actually, you notice the console cable coming out of the front of it. Well, the console cable actually connects up to this switch right here, and that switch right there is what I am using for testing things like ICE, 802.1x, and stuff like that. The ironic part about it is the way the connections work is on the middle server there that's running the security lab has 5 PCs that are Windows 7 Pro, 4 gigs of RAM apiece. And basically what they're designed to do is for me to test 802.1x, test out the Network Access Manager module from AnyConnect and stuff like that, and test the identity management aspect of stuff, and it actually does work quite well. I actually was using the iOS V L2 image in ESXi, but that kept on crashing. So I used the 3750G, or no, just a regular 3750, because it's a stable platform. I used that, and then what I ended up doing was I went through and installed the 5 PCs, and I mapped their network adapters to adapters on the backside, and I'll show you those here in just a minute when I get to the very top. So the virtual machines that you'll see in the videos as we go into ICE and stuff like that, they're actually virtual machines, and their network adapter is mapped to a port on the back of that server. So it's literally like a physical PC, and then I have 3 of those PCs are plugged in right there. These 3 adapters right here, and that's how I connect into it. So that's actually my ICE switch. So when I configure ICE, that's the switch I'm working on, and that's the same switch that my console cable right here connects to that switch right there. So that's how all that's physically connected. And that orange cable you see goes up to my home switch, which is right up there. Now going up, I have my home router, which is just a 2951. It's running 15.1 code. I think it's the latest and greatest that I can get for it. And then the 3750G switch, it's a 24 port gigabit switch. Does the job I need it to do. I've actually pulled a lot of cables out of the lab because of the fact that they were just, not needed anymore. Moving up, I have an old Dell C1100 that died on me probably about 6 months after I bought it. But it had 24 gigs of RAM in it, and it allowed me to run ESXi for a while and learn some VMware. And then this actually was the remnants of my CCIe route switch version 4 home lab. So I had the routers that I bought off eBay. Everything here is eBay except for the PC, which was bought directly from Dell. And then that was all connected. The problem with having this much equipment is it costs a lot to power it all, especially the servers. The servers are pretty power hungry, so it definitely drives up the power bill. Now moving up, I have a couple of ASAs up here, a couple of 5520s, and stuff like that. I have another 2600. No, 3725. 3725. These are all 3725s right here, and there's the 2600s sitting there and stuff like that. So I'm going to flip you over to the back side now, and we'll test that out. So the physical ASAs are there to test things out like active-active failover, clustering, and stuff like that we'll be covering in the ASA videos coming out soon. Okay, so on the back side here, it's not a whole lot to look at. I do have Spectrum as my home internet, and then I have the bottom server here, the 4U. Then I have my security server. These three cables right here, oops, sorry, go to the PCs, and then I've got another couple of cables coming out that goes from management and into the iSCSI connection and stuff like that. And you got the Windows 7 PC set up, or Windows 7 server set up so I can connect into it. This switch up here is actually the switch that it does the iSCSI connectivity. It's the one that actually goes through and allows the PC to talk. Actually, I'll pan up to that. So I have my home network connection. So this is how I manage it through remote desktop. And that connection right there goes to the back of this switch, and that's how the iSCSI connectivity works. On the PC, I actually use Starwind software to go through and set that up. I have my router, my switch, and then if I pan up a little bit higher, I've got a PC or a console there that allows me to console into the connection. I got a keyboard and a mouse there if I need it. But yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. So that's pretty much my home lab. As you can tell, it's not super fancy. Let me pan over here. Over my right shoulder, you'll see I've got a piece of wood that I've mounted to the wall, and those cables right there run the power. And those, if I pan up, connect into that box right there. And then the whole point of that is, if you look, there is a white cable coming out of that box on the top half right there. That cable, that cable is what goes over to my circuit breaker, and that's where the direct circuit comes into this. So all of my lab is physically wired into that setup, so it makes it a whole lot easier to work with. So if power's lost in a part of the house because of a circuit breaker, especially now that it's starting to get cold out and the holiday season's coming up, we're going to have to go put the Christmas lights out in the house. That's obviously going to draw a lot of power. So this way here, my lab doesn't go down. One thing that I don't do that I should is I don't have that, what do you call it? That power on test mode where you go through and you automatically power the VMs when they go up. But so yeah, that's pretty much it. I can't flip the video around for whatever reason. But anyway, that's what I wanted to show you guys. And until next time, guys, take it easy.